My home was full of noise, full of voices, but at the same time, I always felt deeply heard, deeply listened to. In my childhood home, I did not have that dynamic so much.
There are moments in life when someone enters a conversation and doesn't just speak. They shift the atmosphere. They slow the pace, soften the noise, and invite you back into your body, back into the part of you that knows, feels, and remembers who you truly are. This week's guest, Mellini Monique, does exactly that. Mellini is the founder and principal vocal culturalist of Vocal Culture Garden, a specialist in voice, presence, and attuned communication. With a master's in drama therapy, a background in interdisciplinary arts, theatre, and public relations, she has decades of experience helping leaders, creatives, and everyday humans reclaim their authentic voice.
Serve with your voice. Whenever we open our mouths to use our voice to cut through the noise, that's the power of voice.
In this conversation, Mellini brings us a message we desperately need in a world obsessed with volume. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to be attuned to your body, your breath, your truth, and your intention. We explore how understanding what you really feel shapes the resonance of your voice, how speaking from certainty captures attention without force, and how confidence is often communicated through tone, not volume.
To think about voice, I would really encourage more people to think of it as the beautiful tool. It's a tool of connection. It's a tool of meaning.
This is an episode about voice, yes. But really, it's about connection. It's about becoming the kind of person who can love, lead, and relate with depth because they've first learned how to tune into themselves.
Sometimes the noise is silent, and it's in those spaces there's another opportunity to listen deeply and seeing what really your soul is saying that needs to be said and amplified.
If you've ever felt unheard, misunderstood, or disconnected from others, or even yourself, this conversation will feel like a deep exhale, an invitation to reclaim your voice, your truth, and the relationships that matter the most in your life. I'm Steve Hodgson. This is the Noise of Life podcast, and helping us find our voice this week is Mellini Monique. Stepping out of the noise and helping us reclaim the power in our own voice is my guest this week, Mellini Monique. How are you?
I am feeling phenomenal this morning. Thank you so much for having me, Steve. It's good to see you.
All the way from Chicago.
Yes. Yeah,
That
cold Chicago.
is little bit warmer here in Australia.
I bet.
Now, Mellini, I've been so excited for this interview. I'd love to just jump straight in. Can you tell me, what does the noise of life mean to you?
Oh my goodness. The noise of life, it means so much to me. First of all, in this season, I'm a wife. I'm a mother of 6. I homeschool still, 5 of them right now. And I'm running a vocal intelligence agency. So when I tell you noise is coming at me from all angles, but it's something interesting. In the last several years, I've learned how to transmute this noise, this raucous energy coming from every area of my life into actual music. What is it telling me? What is it energizing me to do? And in those times when I'm tempted to think, oh, this noise is draining me, to look at it as an invitation to slow down, to relax, to cater to, instead of being drained.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
And that's kind of the whole reason behind the rebrand to the Noise of Life is because over the years, through my journey, I've worked out that everything is noise.
Mm-hmm.
You can't change the noise, but you can. It's kind of like, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. And I think
Exactly.
when it comes to noise, it's what do you need to listen to, And sometimes the noise is silent.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, yes, yes. Sometimes the noise is silent, and it's in those spaces, I think, once again, there's another opportunity to listen deeply. And in that silence, seeing what really your soul is saying, or your environment is saying, or not saying, that needs to be said and amplified.
Mm, beautiful. Now, through your life, Melanie, what's been your relationship with voice and noise?
What a great question. Let me just tell you, I am one of 8 children myself, and 6 brothers, 1 sister. And so, very literally, growing up, my home was full of noise, full of voices, full of my own voice vying for space within the household. But at the same time, I always felt deeply heard, deeply listened to. And so as I grew, my ear was attuned to listening, listening to voices. And I'm going to tell you my earliest memory of the power of listening to voice as a sure enough tool was somewhere around the 3rd or 4th grade. Now, Steve, I didn't bother anybody when I was young, but if someone bothered me, I was sure to make sure they would never want to bother me again. So I was in school and something happened in the classroom, and it ended up being a fight amongst the students. And I was involved in that fight. And about 4 or 5 of us got sent to the principal's office. And as we were sitting in the principal's office, everybody was still full of adrenaline, huffing and puffing and murmuring and saying still, like, I'm going to get you after school and all of these things. And the principal comes in, and she was this very demure, quiet, soft spoken woman. And she started with one student and she would ask what happened. And they would huffing and buffing and sharing their story. And then she would go to the next person. What happened? Same sort of putting on, voice just very striated, anger, constriction, full of huffing and breathiness. And she maintained her composure until she got to me. Now I'm watching her response. I'm watching her listening. I'm listening to them speaking. And when she got to me, I don't know why at that time, but I decided to imitate her. And so when she said, Melanie, what happened? I said, I don't know. I was just sitting in the classroom and someone hit me. Now that was a complete lie, Steve, but she looked at me straight away and said, go back to the classroom. And so that interaction unlocked something in me about the tool of voice, about building rapport, about listening, about allowing yourself to play with your voice. Because I didn't speak like that on a day to day basis, but I played with a nuance of my voice that created an outcome that was in my favor. And so, since that early age, and also during that time, which is interesting, which probably played a tremendous role in that happening, is I was in theater. And theater is where I learned the impact of the human voice on the human psyche, right? And so growing up like that through theater, through listening, through having all these voices in my home, different voices, and being very attuned to voices, what I call out in the wild. I thought everybody was listening and hearing the way I was. It took me until my, not joking, into my early 30s to realize not everyone was hearing the same way that I was hearing.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. In talking about your school, childhood, those kind of things, what do you think these days, how does our voice or, when we're younger, we're told to, kind of, I know when I was younger, it was kind of like, not seen, like not heard, it was
Like
kind of
be
this,
seen but not heard,
but
or
yeah,
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
that's right. And, you know, listen, be quiet, all these different things. Talk to me about the influence that we have and how that molds us in life.
Yes. So, very interestingly, in my childhood home, I did not have that dynamic so much to be seen and not heard. Now, there was definitely a place for children. You definitely, my mother was very keen on you do not insert yourself in adult dynamics and adult conversations. But my mother was also very much like, express yourself, talk to me. Tell me what happened. Explain, share your emotion. Now, the difference between that and what I'm seeing today is children today are almost encouraged to be in this false communication all day, every day through social media. Huh. They are say something, make a post, make up something. And it's almost this, in many ways, this one-way communication where they're on. They're very performative, but they're not listening. Their communication is very one-sided. And then when they do listen, it is very much not a listening from an interactive, I see you, you see me, so we're interacting together. It's a listening from uh, what are they saying about me? What are the trends? What do I need to shine and elevate to? And so I find it to be very discordant. And as a matter of fact, with the Vocal Intelligence Agency, I have noticed since COVID specifically, a great reduction in true communication ability among young people and adults, Steve. And so I think one of our human needs is to be seen and to be heard. But it seems these days that there's this facade, this veneer that allows or calls for the communication to be very, very shallow. And when we attempt to go past that shallow veneer, there's almost a crash out, a silencing. People can't really communicate with depth and vulnerability. So that's what I'm
Mm.
seeing.
For those listening, Melanie, that have been molded through their childhood, through their upbringing, through their life to today, talk to me about what questions could they ask themselves around unlocking their voice that may have been drowned
Yes.
out a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. This is a question that I work with all my clients with. And that first question, let me preface it because it has been my experience that over 98% of my clients, their first, what I call vocal trauma, began in childhood, whether it was at home or at school, 98% in childhood. And so, one question that we can ask ourselves is when is the first time you felt like you were being silenced? It
Mm.
could have been, you could have been told something like, oh, well, that's just silly. Or as bold as, be quiet, no one wants to hear that. So I ask you to go back in the memory. And when was that time that you remember that you spoke? You literally spoke and it was minimized, it was hushed, you were made to feel silly. And the reason we go back there is because I believe that that is the foundation of building this hard house of lies of that your voice is not good enough or it's too much. And so we started calibrating, muzzling, silencing, quieting that truth of who we are and what our voice really wants to say. That's one question. And then to kind of go further with the last statement that I just made, we can also ask ourselves, what do I really want to say? If I were in a room and nobody was listening, what is it that I would really want to say? And how would I really want to say it? So there's a visioning that happens for our voice. And in my experience, Steve, I don't know. Let me ask you, how often do you think about your literal voice?
It's interesting running a podcast and, doing some speaking and some facilitating. It's been one of the things that I've actually been looking into around how to project the voice, how
Okay.
to be more impactful. And also,
Yes.
especially since your session in Sardinia, I just how you could be light and airy, and then you could be, strong and powerful, and then you could bring it back.
Yes.
And just the way it makes you feel, and it just it feels these feelings and emotions just with the power of the
Yes.
voice. And for me, that was
Yes.
really impactful in that session. And
I love,
that's what
can
I've
I?
been, yeah,
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish up.
I was just saying, and that's kind of helping me cultivate in how I talk and how I express myself now. And I think there's a power in that.
Yes. I absolutely love what you just mentioned. I asked you, like, how often do you think about your voice? And I love that you are thinking about your voice. But do you know so many people are like, what? I just sound like this. I mean, my voice is what it is. But what you just mentioned about how it can be light and airy at times and strong and grounded and centered at other times, it is what I call vocal repertoire, right? We have this beautiful expansiveness of our voice, and most of us only speak within about 30% of it. What about the other 70%? And it is in playing with our vocal repertoire that we can infuse emotion into it. Literally, how do we actually feel? How can we convey what we're thinking and feeling? And how can we elicit emotion from those that we're speaking with, right? I have worked with people who are what I call expressive monotones, meaning they have a very narrow range of vocal expression. So they kind of sound like this. And they're like, no, really, I'm happy. I'm excited about what's happening. And I'm like, are you? And so my question, I begin to say, what muted that expression? Because if you go back to childhood, I can almost guarantee you they weren't saying, I'm excited. They were unexcited. I'm so happy. And so to think about voice, I would really, really encourage more people to think of it as the beautiful tool that it is. And what kind of tool? It's a tool of connection. It's a tool of meaning. It's a tool of culture making and culture carrying. It's a tool of healing. It's a tool of creativity. And guess what? It's also a tool of creating the outcomes that we desire. I'll stop there. I get so excited.
So, so I think about a lot of the time when we think we need to be or we want to be heard, a lot of the time people will shout or heighten their voice. But talk to me about how we can use our voice and how listeners can use their voice. You don't have to shout to communicate and for your voice to be heard?
You do not. You do not need to raise the noise, right? Oftentimes, it begins with attunement to self. What is it that you really feel? What is it that you're hearing? What is it that you truly want to communicate? And then from that place, there is a type of certainty. I don't care if it's joy or anger or trepidation or nervousness. When you are able to tap into that within, when you open your mouth to communicate, more of the true resonance of that comes out. And then, very literally, with the speaking voice, you don't have to be loud because that certainty begins to come through. And as a matter of fact, because there's so much noise in the world in general, oftentimes if you lower your voice, people are like, what? Often, oftentimes, right, they listen more. And then oftentimes, if you speak from a place of certainty, which many people call confidence, other ears listen up. They're like, oh, Steve has something to say. Steve know what he's talking about. In my experience, the globe over. So I'm based in Chicago, but I work around the world. And the globe over, when people think someone else is trustworthy and warm, that combination causes people to listen when they speak. So if they just think you're trustworthy but a jerk, mm, they don't want to listen. Their brain shuts off like, I know what Steve has to say is facts, but he's a jerk. Don't want to listen to him. And they tune out. But when Steve is trustworthy and warm, every time Steve opens his mouth, it's like, what does he have to say? Because guess what? There's a part of me that likes you. And it doesn't mean like I have to like all of who you are. Maybe I just like your knowledge base. Maybe I like the way you make me feel when you speak. Maybe I like that when you speak, I feel intelligent. I feel heard. I feel affirmed. So to be heard is not to get loud, it's to be resonant, to be certain, and one more thing, to be emotionally intelligent. So much of being heard is first understanding how your listeners are feeling in the moment. I'll never forget, one day I work with all ages, and I was in a high school. And I was there to speak about communication, there to speak about social emotional learning and communication, right? And so I get in the auditorium and I'm so excited and I'm ready to speak to this group of teens. And I feel the energy is just off. And so as I take the stage, I'm looking now at the students and I see body language just like, you know, faces, I don't want to be here. So, what many people who go to speak to a crowd like that do is they just start talking, they try to move forward with the agenda, and it doesn't land. They're not being heard. And then they begin to feel icky and yucky, and they just want to hurry up and get through the content. So, they're not delivering well, and certainly the audience isn't hearing well. So, when I got up there, I was like, hey, you all don't want to be here, do you? If you don't want to be here, guess what? Raise your hand. Three-fourths of the auditorium raise their hand. And so now I'm building rapport by allowing them to be seen. And I'm like, guess what? I remember not wanting to be there. I remember being in your place, but I had to be there anyway. So since we both have to be here and then just really um, building from that place. Do you know, once I named it, allowed them to feel seen, built some emotional rapport, now they were in it. Now I could go back to this energy, but guess what? There's a tool. You meet the energy where it is, and then you slowly raise it versus going into a room like this, like, hey, they're thinking, get out. you know? So you come in and you use that emotional intelligence and you fuse it with your voice, and then you become the thermostat, not the thermometer. Does that make sense?
Oh, that is so good. It made me, as you were talking about that, it made me think about when I've been to a conference and you see a keynote speaker get up day 2 after lunch, right? Now, every speaker and every person that goes to a conference knows that that is like the worst time slot, right?
Yes.
Is after
Yes.
lunch, day 2. And I think about it around that, knowing your audience. And I've seen some people straight after lunch on day 2 absolutely kill it. And I've seen
Yeah.
some people absolutely kill it, but in another way, right?
Exactly.
And and the ones that really kill it well, everyone's kind of feeling sluggish in their seats. A lot of the time the speaker will come on and he'll get them up, he'll get them dancing, he'll get them moving
Yes.
because he changes
Yes.
their physiology.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so true. And I'm glad you said physiology. Oftentimes, when people think of the voice, they think of it from the throat to the mouth and out. Our entire body is the vessel of voice, right? And so sometimes, even as the speaker, we need to tap into this vessel to create a certain sound. So, for many people hate speaking in public. One great thing to do is before you go on to speak and you're all full of nerves and jitters, that's to activate your parasympathetic nervous system through simple or some deep breathing, some active breathing. It's literally letting your nervous system know I am safe, I am all right, and we can do this.
Can you
And mhm.
can you take us through an exercise right now for listeners?
Oh, absolutely. I can think of 2. One is to calm you down, and one is to kinda hype you up and tune your voice. So the first one is the classic box breathing. So we're gonna do it on a simple count of 4. We're gonna inhale for the count of 4, we're gonna hold for the count of 4, and then we're gonna exhale through our mouths on the count of 4. Are you ready, Steve?
Yeah, let's
And you'll
go.
just see my fingers. Let's go. Inhale. Do it again. One more time. Inhale. Steve, how do you feel in your body?
Ah, beautiful. I use this in my sessions as well. Even when I do my mental health first aid, I use this. I
I
also
love
use
that.
it to actually um, get to sleep. If I'm struggling to get to sleep, I use box breathing as well.
Yes. It's such a great tool because it's setting or resetting, shall I say, that rest, digest, pleasure center. And as a speaker, or even if you're getting ready to enter a hard conversation one on one with somebody, it's best to ground yourself and let your nervous system know I am safe, right? And so let's go to the other end of the spectrum where maybe we're feeling a little off or our energy is low and we need to go speak in a boardroom or to a crowd or lead a workshop or even talk to a camera where it's just you and that green light, but you need to bring all the energy. Another exercise I like to do is uh, uh, pushing out a strong. ha. But the key here is the voice should not come from the diaphragm, the throat. It is all coming from air being pushed from the diaphragm on the vowel ah, ah,
Ah,
ah, ah, ah. Drop that chin. Ah, ah,
ah,
ah.
ah, 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 ah,
Drop
ah,
the chin even
ah,
more.
ah, 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 ah. Anyone
Okay,
listening
now
to this
pause.
is going to be really interesting.
I know, but I want you to think about it, and I'm going to demo it a little bit for you. And when I
Perfect.
do this with my clients, I encourage them to get in the body to move. Ah, ah, ah. Bounce those knees, raise those shoulders, move those hands. Ah, ah, ah. And if you think about it, it makes you think about so many ancient sounds, tribal cultures. It's raising the energy, it's firing the diaphragm, it's getting the heart even involved, it's making the blood flow. And so you have, in essence, just raised that energy, and now you can go give it to those you are about to really, what I say is serve with your voice. Whenever we open our mouths to use our voice to cut through the noise, whether that's the literal noise in the room, the noise of thought, the noise of limiting beliefs, the noise of whatever it is, you can use your energy through your voice to cut through it. And
Um,
that's the power of voice.
Perfect. And
Mhm.
Melanie, talk to me about the power of the breath with the voice as well, because it is very much
Yes.
around breathing. When you're talking, when you're, a leader standing up, talk to me about
Yes,
how they cultivate the breath and how they have to tune into their breath to really get their voice out.
absolutely. So let's just start with this: little breath, little voice, strong breath, strong voice. So when you are not breathing deeply as a speaker, that's when you hear a weak voice, a trembling, shaky voice, or just a really small voice. And most of us, Steve, we don't breathe deeply in general. We all know babies. When babies come out, you can just, as a parent, I'm a mother of six. As a parent, I remember you look at the babies, and when they're young, you just look at their bellies to see, are they breathing? And you see that belly rise and that belly fall. That is natural breathing. But somehow, through the tension and stress of life, we leave that belly breathing and we go to chest and shoulder breathing. And that's that shallow breathing where our lungs don't fill up and push that diaphragm down. Therefore, that diaphragm is not pushing much air up and out, which gives us a strong voice. I think about opera singers, right? And so, once again, simple exercises like deep, robust breathing can begin to prime the activity of the diaphragm and help you have a strong, sustained voice. It's another reason. Have you heard of vocal fry, or what is called vocal fry? What that let me explain it, and when I explain it, you're gonna go, "Oh, yeah, I've heard that." It's when you hear it a lot in women, when they're talking and then their voice ends and they run out of air, and so they sound like this. It's because they've run out of breath. They have literally run out of breath, and so their voice is struggling. Their vocal cords are like, "Let me beat on whatever it's left," and it sounds very gravelly, right? But if you're breathing and you're allowing your voice to be carried on the breath, you won't have any of that, all right? Let me also say, using box breathing, you can build up your deep breathing. You want to inhale through the nose and imagine that your air pipe is the neck of a balloon and that your belly is the round part of a balloon. And you just want to allow your belly to breathe up, meaning your shoulders aren't going to hike up, your chest is not going to expand at first. It's going to be that rounded part of the belly. And then, if you are a really good deep breather, the neck, meaning the chest, will begin to blow up too. And at first, you might only be able to do that for a 4 count. And then you challenge yourself to go to a 6 count and then to an 8 count. And my really good deep breathers can get, I mean, all the way up to 16 and 18 and 20s. But you start small and you stretch it. Okay. And that is how we can begin to have beautiful, strong voices because we have beautiful, deep breath. But another thing cuts our voice, Steve. Even when we can breathe deeply and we can support our voice, and that's emotional discord, is what I'll call it. So when a person doesn't feel like they're enough, or there's shame and guilt or anger, even, these things physically, on a physiological level, literally constrict our vocal cords. It makes them rigid. It limits the motion of our diaphragm, and therefore we hear it in the voice. But when we're happy and feeling joyful and free, the same thing is happening in our physiology. Our vocal cords are relaxed, our lungs are um, free to expand, our body is open. And because we are the vessel of the voice, now our voice sounds so much more expansive. So that is why in the work that I do, I say our voice bone is connected to our emotion bone, which is connected to our body bone. And I get, as you experienced in Sardinia at Synergy, I get people into the body sometimes first to unlock the emotion, or even if we get into emotion first, we locate it in the body and explore it in the body to release it through our vocal expression. Mhm.
Mm, beautiful. I was just thinking about I had this thought around you were talking about you were mentioning earlier around when you're young, just just the expression and the happiness and the voice and and then as we get older we get quieter, there's more fear in our voice, there's more fear in
Yes.
ourselves, and we kind of go more into silence and within ourselves. But I was thinking about and you see this in America, we see this around the world, is when something happens and a news crew goes and says to an adult, what do what did you witness or what's going on? And a lot of the time they're more reserved. Whereas
Yes.
sometimes the biggest news stars on the internet and social media are the 5-year-old or 6-year-old kid that gets on the camera and just tells it as it is, exactly what they're seeing it with all their
Yes.
personality, with all their
Yes.
voice, with all their joy, with all their just authenticity.
Yes.
And
And
we
mm,
lose that.
not only do we lose the ability to vocalize it, we lose the ability to witness it in adults. When a child does it, you go, there's a part of your limbic system that says that's a child. Of course, they're going to be wild and free and they're going to tell it like it is. And we love it because it actually speaks to our humanity.
Mm.
It speaks to that part of us that many of us wish was still alive and we
Mhm.
internally resonate with. But remember, I just said we lose the capacity to witness it in adults. Therefore, if an adult came and they were that free and expressive and wild, many of us go, that's too much. That is too much. And I, Steve, what do you know? I've been accused of being too much because I
No,
am, can you believe it?
not at all.
And I understand why. It's because many times my communication is very childlike. I let it show up in my face. I let it show up in my body. I let it show up in all the many expressions of my voice, from the quiet to the surprise to the what? I let it show up. And people go, whoa, that is too much.
Can I ask a
Because,
question?
yes.
When was the first time you were told you were too much?
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's a good question for me. It was not in my childhood. It was in the second place that I see it happening within my clients. And this is where it came from for me. It was in my first serious romantic relationship,
Ooh.
when just my expressiveness and my freedom, I'm very in tune with my emotions, probably because my mother always asked me, how do you feel? And she was serious about me expressing it. I'm very in tune with my emotion. So when I was able to express the way I feel very clearly, then I was made to feel like, that's too much. You're doing too much. You're so dramatic. And so there was a phrase a couple years ago that really came from the internet girlies that said, am I doing too much? Are you just too basic? Or why be basic when you can be extra? And so I still walk this uh, line transparently, because I need us to know that, remember, we talked about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence requires us to wield our own ability to express and to emote very wisely. So, I'm in corporate spaces, I'm in tech spaces, I'm in woo-woo wellness spaces, I'm in deep science spaces. And so as I navigate all of these spaces, I have to wield my own ability to show up in my truth and in my emotion very carefully, in a way to connect instead of repel. And this is what I call vocal bridging, right? And so I'll give you a really good example. I work with financial analysts, and I'm going to tell you, I love working with introverted people because they have a superpower that often extroverts overlook through their charisma. And that is the ability to listen deeply and therefore speak with a level of certainty where they don't always need all this charisma. They need different tools, right? And so I work with these financial analysts, and every time it doesn't fail, I walk into the room and there's this stoicism, this seriousness, this kind of like tight, closed offness. If I came in the room with all of this color, which I'm physically always full of color, no pun intended, right? But all the pun intended. And so if I walked in this room with all this color, they would immediately shut out, close down, think this is too much. So I go in a little bit more in that part of my vocal nuance that's a little bit more reserved, a little bit more quiet. And then in that very room, going back to that thermostat principle, I slowly turn it up, turn it up, turn it up, until the end of the workshop. Not only am I loud and emotional and fully expressive, they have come out of their shells, and more of their vocal repertoire is on display. And that makes my soul happy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and obviously being in a conference, being in a workshop and being in an environment that you've been in, you you're one of these people that can just walk into a room or a space and the energy lifts even without you talking.
Mm.
Just the
You
way you
know,
hold yourself and the way you express yourself.
thank you for that, Steve. And I used to take it for granted. Well, let's even go back before I used to take it for granted. I used to feel, I don't know if attacked is too strong of a word, but all my life, I would get commentary on how straight I sat and talked. How straight I sat and walked. And so people heard me through that. And so when I was young, you think you're better than everybody else. Who do you think you are? And then when I was a younger woman, people would say things like, oh, here comes the queen, but it was in a very derogatory way. And it was simply because the way I held my body in space. And so I remember there was a phase in my life trying to kind of round my shoulders down, kind of, you know, not be as straight and erect. But guess what? It's just who I am. It's just how I feel best.
Mhm.
Upright, heart open, I really feel full of love, right? And I just want to share that and be open for everyone. But then it came to a point where I became so deeply aware of my presence and the impact that it had on people. And I said, I will never take it for granted. I will never take it for granted. And so now, to your point, Steve, I'm more aware of the power that comes with being upright and heart open. And it's not that poise or that presence is not unique to me. For most people, if they're upright and heart open, it commands the very similar type of attention. And people begin to hear your voice through how they see you. And so I do an exercise with many of my clients. If I'm bowed in, heart very closed off, shoulders rounded, head kind of low. Even if I'm saying hello, it's discordant in the minds of the people. And you see me point back here because our limbic systems within milliseconds are trying to determine, am I safe? Am I not? Is this something I can connect with or is it not? Do I enjoy this or not? So immediately there's this discord back here in our brains, and we are trying to figure out, do I listen? Do I tap out? Do I leave? Do I stay? Am I safe? Am I not? So when we can help people hear through our physical presence, we are putting on our superhero cape because we're helping ourselves as well as helping the people we are there to serve with our voice, with our words, with our message.
Mm. You touched on it a little bit earlier around, um, when you were first kind of told you were too much, which was in a relationship. Now,
Hmm.
I think probably there's a lot of noise in the world at the moment, and there's a lot of silence in the world when it comes to
Hmm.
relationships. I'd really love to
Hmm.
know some tips in regards to how do we communicate better, not just in romantic relationships, but I know there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of struggles
Yes.
in that space, but how we also communicate to our friends and our colleagues.
Yes. I absolutely love this question because what evolved in my work, I've been running this consultancy, this practice for almost 8 years now. And when I first started, I was just like, oh, I'm going to help executives. I'm going to help visionaries. I'm going to help thought leaders get their voice together and communicate really well. Well, very quickly in my one on one sessions, I learned that when people can't communicate well and don't feel heard or able to share their voice well in their private relationships or their relationships with their spouse or their children or their mother, it impacts how they show up in their professional life or in their I am a leader visionary life, right? Um, And let me just share this fun fact. It's another reason I don't work with men in groups anymore. And
We
we'll
had this
talk.
conversation.
Yes, yes, yes. Because they're always posturing for each other because of what the world has placed upon them. You have to be stoic. You have to know everything. You cannot falter. And so to be that vulnerable in front of other men is hard. But oh, when I get the men alone, they're like, oh, it's a lot.
Mm.
They're like Atlas with the world on their
And
shoulders.
we had this conversation, and I said to you, it's interesting
Yes.
because you as a facilitator and you as a coach, being a female, because what I see, hosting and also attending men's retreats, is that I don't see that posturing when it's a male host, and a group of men.
Yes. Isn't that interesting? And so maybe even just think about generalized male psychology. You all are protectors, providers, defenders. And so sometimes in the face of a woman, you still are in that role. And it's hard to just kind of relax and soften. Whereas also sometimes, um, when men have had really good mothering relationships, when they've been nurtured well, they can also be in the presence of a woman and feel like it's a safe space to become soft, right? But let's go back to just relationships in general. Rule number one, we are all human. And I know that sounds so simple. I know that sounds so simple, but it's not. We are all human and we are all worthy of a full range of emotion. So when you listen from that place, first of all, that means if somebody else is frustrated, you can listen. If somebody else is angry, you can listen. And you can listen with the ear that says, it's not about me. I'm not being attacked. It's not my fault. It is their feeling status, right? And when you can, communicating is about what I call radical listening. It's very much so about listening as much as it is voicing, right? So when you can listen from a place of this is their experience, it is their human feeling, thought, emotion, and it's not necessarily about me. So now I'm listening. Now I can open my mouth and speak from my thoughts, my feelings, and to use, and we've heard this, use statements that speak from my experience, not theirs. I feel sad about what you just said. You know, I, or even sometimes I've been speaking to some people that were really so fiery and emotional that it made me nervous. And I would open up my mouth and say, whew, everything that you just said is literally making me feel nervous in my body. Let me take a moment. And oh, another technique is to name it. And I said that earlier. Name what you're feeling, name what's in the room. I feel nervous. Give me a moment to just calm down. Whew. Okay, so thank you for sharing that fire, that anger with me. But I want to tell you that's not my experience. I didn't see it like that. And to speak from our own experience. And so another thing is when we're in these relationships, I think if we can understand the other person's communication style. Most of
Talk
us
to me
are,
about that.
yeah, I was just about to say, most of us are so selfish. We just want to talk. We just want to be heard. And the way we want to be heard is the way we want you to listen. But it actually doesn't work like that. True communication means, for instance, I'll use myself. This is a very public story. Third year of my marriage. I've been married 21 years, by the way. Third year of my marriage, my husband said to me, you act like a man. I was bereft of utterances, right? I was like, everything in me was screaming. And I said, well, because I am very analytical to a point, Steve. I said, well, what do you mean by that? Everything he meant by that was the way I communicated. Everything. It was the strength in my voice. It was how when he says something, I have a immediate, what about this? Or what about that? Have you thought about this? And due to his communication style, he was used to having space. He was used to the women voices in his life were more soft, more giving space. And so when I understood that, it wasn't that he was just demanding that I be someone different. It was literally how his nervous system, how his listening pathway, how his neural networks felt the most safe when hearing. And he was the most open to hear in that way. So then, as a high level communicator, I had a choice to make, Steve. And this is where a lot of people get it wrong. A lot of people say, you just want me to be someone different. You just want me to change. This is the way I am. When it's not true. Remember, we all have this expansive vocal repertoire, and I'm going to prove it to you. So I had a choice to make. I had a choice. Well, will I inhabit the softer nuance, the more spacey nuance, the 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 parts of my vocal repertoire that unlocked my husband, that made him feel heard, made him feel safe? It was a choice. And I have to choose that again and again and again if we're going to be in this beautiful, robust communication pattern. And even with the children, do you have children, Steve?
Yes, I do. Yeah. But they're
Okay,
16 and 18 now.
even better. Sometimes with our teens, we want to come and we want to talk, and they're like, like I'm not here for it. They want the get to the point version because they have things to do. We can, as parents,
That's why they use letters in text, right? Rather than actual
exactly.
full words.
BRB, be right back. LMAO, And so they want in when a parent comes at that stage and they're trying to express and take the long road, they're thinking, why are you lecturing me? Can you just get to the point? So as a parent, we can resist and continue to lecture them, or we can say, hey, I need you to do this because this. And they're like, okay, right? And so it's learning the communication style of that person at that time. And so it requires, once again, what? Listening. And just a moment ago, I said we all have this vocal repertoire and we're all showing up differently, naturally, all the time anyway. Many people say, oh, have you heard the phrase? It's slipping my mind right now. Code switching. Have you heard that phrase?
Yeah, I have. Yep.
I reject it. I don't believe in code switching.
Uh-huh.
I believe in vocal repertoire. And I'm going to prove that we're changing our voice all the time, depending on who we're talking to. So I live in a multi-generational home. It's me, my husband, my children, and my mother-in-law with me, right? So my house is like from 70 to 7. I wake up in the morning next to my husband. I'm like, good morning, babe. Low voice. I let the breathiness out because I just want to, soft delight him in the morning, kind of wake him up gently. Good morning, babe. There's a knock on my door. I'm like, who is it? Voice more flat, more strong. Who is at my door? Who is it? Right? Of course, it's one of those children, right? And so then I come out of my room and I'm in the kitchen. My mother-in-law is there and I'm like, good morning. Pitch goes up. Why? Why am I doing all of this? I'm not thinking about it. It's just a natural response because there's something about our psychology and our physiology and the voice that knows, why am I talking to my mother in law saying, good morning? It's just, you know? So we do it all the time. So here's the question, Steve. For all of us adults who are working in different networking spaces and just different spaces all around, why do we think it's code switching or being fake or not authentic when we on command allow the different parts of our vocal repertoire to come forth or be called forth? Why do we think it's being phony?
Mm. For those listening, can you just explain code switching, just so
Oh,
listeners
yes.
have that
Code
definition?
switching, code switching is when you have to change the quality or sound of your voice to fit in into a certain ecosystem. And historically, it has meant survival for certain groups of people. Immigrants here in America, code switching is still very alive and real for many demographics like Black people in America, Hispanic people in America, because the corporate outlay is Eurocentric dominant. So their voice, the sound of Eurocentric voices, is the culture of corporate America. And so there's a time when you come into the corporate space, you can't maybe talk in your wide, flat voice. It's not looked at as professional. So now you have to articulate in a slightly different way, maybe round your tones, maybe shorten your prosody a little bit to seem and sound professional. All right. Now, how can I say? I get a lot of clients that are like, I'm exhausted all day from having to use this voice to seem professional. That's where I have a tool called vocal bridging comes in because there are so many different micro cultures where it's like the culture of a five-star hotel, the culture of a certain restaurant, the culture of hip hop, the culture in your home. And everyone has a different ear or a different sound of voices in that ecosystem that are acceptable. So don't get mad at the place that you're trying to insert your voice into. Build a bridge with your voice. Understand the culture of the sounds there. Learn how to pull those sounds from your vocal repertoire and then bridge them back to the sounds that you want to use most often after you've built rapport and trust and safety. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Hmm.
There's a beautiful thing that's happened with every decade, every year that goes past, is that women are having a far greater voice in the world, in workplaces, in leadership. You know, it's building, right? It's building.
Yes. Yes.
But one of the hardest things for that is, and this is what I'm seeing in men's retreats, is that I can almost go into a men's retreat and I can see how this dynamic is playing out in home life or in their life, whether it's professional or personal, that
Hmm.
they've actually been silenced, right? So it's not having this equal voice, right?
That the women have been silenced or the men?
No, the men are being silenced in many ways.
Yes.
Um, and it's all around this, you know, what happens is you said, you know, when your husband 3 years into the relationship, you know, and you kind of felt defensive, right? Like,
Yes.
hang on, you know, like just because you were probably showing a little bit of your masculine, right, rather than the
Probably a
feminine,
lot of it.
right?
That's right.
But so I think there's this real dynamic shift, and I think a lot of people listening, and I know a lot of the men that I'm dealing with,
Yes.
um, are are experiencing this, and it's interesting. It's like a slow hum, but I was at a retreat recently, and you have some people that come in and they're happy to share. They're happy to share their voice, share their
Mhm.
story, and very vocally and happily, and you give them that space and it shares. But there's a lot of people that are very quiet and they don't really say much at the start, but
Mhm.
over time, it's like this slow hum,
Mhm.
and then by the end of the
Mhm.
weekend, you go, "Oh my god, this person has a voice," right? And it's the environment they're in, and, I think some of the tips that you've given there around relationships, and how to communicate, they always talk about
Yes.
it's not the you, it's the I.
That's
Right?
right.
I.
That's right.
Because a lot of the time, defensiveness, I think, is probably one of the key things that just shuts down communication and
It's killing
silences
it.
not just men, but women as well.
Yes. Can I speak to the male female workforce dynamic? And
Would love you to.
I know a lot of women hate when I say this. Um, it's kind of two pronged. Women are in the workplace more globally. Women are being heard more. But on one hand, that is fabulous. But the quality of how they're being heard is what I'm concerned about because women in the workplace are adopting very male centric, masculine patterns of speech.
Mm.
And it's because they it's for a lot of reasons because the workplace for a long time has been male centric, and so the men are having a hard, almost having like a whiplash, like what are these women voices doing here? And they're reminding me of my wife, my mother. Should I be listening to them? I know she's smart, but my limbic system is saying she sounds like my daughter. Like it is a lot going on, right? And so women are wanting to be heard. So they're starting to talk very staccato, be very stoic, be loud, be very aggressive. And what that does in the male limbic system is say, I have something to defend, I have something to protect. And his brain is saying, no, she's very talented. That's why we hired her. But everything in his physiology is going like, I can't listen to this. I can't listen to her. And so he has to activate his frontal lobe to say, "Who I need to listen. I need to hear this wisdom." So there's a lot of energy for a lot of men in the workplace to listen to their colleague whom in their frontal cortex they know is very capable, very wise, very knowledgeable. That's why she's here, right?
Yeah.
But for a
Yep.
lot of men, they're not willing to do that work. They're not willing to do that work with their vocal bias. Therefore, there's a lot of tension there. And so I have a program called Vocal AF, Vocal Assertive Feminine, that just really encourages women to not go masculine, to lean into the feminine, even in the workplace, to be heard. Now, men are feeling silenced, and I have a lot of compassion going back to that Atlas principle where men feel like, especially in the workplace, they have to know it all, they have to hold it all, they can't make any mistakes. And oftentimes, many men in the presence of women still feel like they have to be the head, have that leg up, know it all, as if they're the husbands of the workplace when we are actually just colleagues here. We should be on a flat dynamic, not a hierarchical dynamic. And so they're carrying that pressure and they're trying to communicate and use their voice from that place. And they are becoming jerks, complete, let me just say jerks, or they're becoming silent and angry. And when they do communicate, it's not from a helpful place, it's from a dominant dynamic. And so it's not helping the communication in the workplace at all. And a lot of women in general don't care about that dynamic because they're like, men have been talking for centuries. They've silenced us for centuries. They need to make space for our voices. But I understand there's a gentle dynamic there. There is almost like, I think there needs to be a breaking of the day where men are receiving the female voice like the sun dawns and then it shines, and women are understanding that this light of our voices might be a little bright, you know? And so there needs to be this beautiful relationship of, once again, understanding humanity within us all, understanding true dynamics of communication. And it takes a lot of truth telling. And most people are not calibrated enough to handle that much truth and are not vulnerable enough to handle that much truth. But it's so needed. It is so needed.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mellini, for those that are listening right now, men and women, you talked about vocal bridging. What are
Yes.
some tips? So, on this topic of male and female dynamics, professional environment. So, you know, if you've got a male leader who's got to be very masculine, very, powerful, I suppose, to a certain point in his role.
Mm-hmm.
And equally from a female perspective as well, she may be taking on more of the masculine and having that powerful role at work.
Mm-hmm.
They're driving home in the car. Now, it's hard to you've
D-roll.
got to have you've got to de-roll, right? Because playing the masculine and then coming home for a female and be, actually
Y-
probably have to stay stepping into that mother role and vice
yes.
versa for men and women.
Yes.
What are some tips there that you would recommend?
I love this question. And it's going back to vocal repertoire. It's when you play in your vocal repertoire. And when I say play, not just one day, daily, you're playing loud voice, soft voice, strong voice, stern voice, playful voice, energetic voice. When you're learning how to play in this vocal expansiveness that you have, you become more nimble, you become more fluid, and it's easier to enroll and de-roll. Now, I use that term with trepidation because it makes me think about acting. And
Mm.
when you are using your voice like a tool, I don't believe in acting, but I do believe in accessing all of the nuance of your voice. So, for instance, I'm always out in these corporate spaces teaching, instructing. You want to do this, duh, duh, duh. So, when I come home, I need to remember I'm coming home to a soft space. I am the thermostat even in my home. So I want to engender softness and love and tenderness and passion and nurturing. So I need to lean in to those elements of my voice. So it could be as I'm taking the train home or driving home that I am letting go and remembering I am the thermostat, and what I'm about to do is go home to my husband. Hey, like when I come through the door, I'm like, hey, babe. I soften, I soften my voice. There's a little bit more prosody, a little bit more flow. Like I'm not out in the world saying, hey, Steve, but hey, I'm like, hey, Steve, but hey, babe, And when I see my children, my pitch goes up. Hi. I'm not, hello. Hi. How are you? What are you doing? And so if we can remember the beauty of our expansiveness, and we have the human ability to pull out different nuances of our vocal repertoire to serve those who are hearing our voice. It's that simple, but it's that complicated all at once.
Yeah,
Being
I love it.
mindful. Hmm.
I love it. That's a great tip, and I'm sure listeners will take a lot away from that and some of those other
Wait,
tips that you
one
gave.
more thing. One more thing. for
Yes.
the for the male voice. I speak as a woman and I speak from our perspective so often, but the male voice too. when you're so accustomed to being at work and do this, do that, giving commands and demands and holding things accountable, when you go home, your wife and children are tender. They're not breakable, but they're tender. And so to go from yes, no, to, hey, honey, and to speak to the children with tenderness, I double, triple dog dare my males, my men who have to hold such grave, roles of positions where they're giving commands and the buck stops with them, to go home and just let a little bit of that nuanced tenderness in the voice come out. If you're doing it right, your wife is going to go, what's going on with you? Your children's going to be like, Dad, why do you sound like that? That's how you know you're stepping more into that nuance, but to practice it and see what it brings forth. Because remember, I said the voice is a tool that can be used to create outcomes that you desire.
Mm. Love it. So, for someone listening, Mellini, right now that feels they've lost their voice, what would you say to them?
I love that question. This is when you go back inside. You go back inside, and we all have an internal voice, but usually it's overlaid with so many external voices, all the external noise. And we think a lot of that noise is our own, but we've just internalized it. It's not. So I encourage you to be still for a moment. And there's a voice in there. And the way I explain it is it's trying to speak, but every time that voice gets a little loud, there's this nervousness, there's a fear, and you shut it down yourself. I want to encourage you to begin to let that voice bubble up a little bit more. And when it becomes too intense, just think on other things and then go back to it until that voice is louder and louder. But I want you to do that with asking yourself a question. Two questions, actually. What do I want to say or need to say? And then let that little voice bubble up. And then the other question is, how do I want to be heard? If you begin to ask yourself those two questions perpetually and let that still small voice within you bubble up until you hear it, then you can begin to move and say what needs to be said in the way you want to be heard. Does that make sense, Steve?
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely
Yes.
fantastic. One last question, Mellini. If your voice had a message for you today, what would it say?
If my voice had a message for me today, I always speak for so many other people. Today, my voice would say, play all day. Play all day. And the reason it would say that is because I have so much work today that sometimes I get in this zone of, I got to get it done. Don't talk to me, da 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 da. But I find that I flow so much better when I'm in the space of play. So my voice would tell myself, play all day and see what that does for you.
Yeah, I love that. Mellini, it has been an absolutely phenomenal conversation with you. So many
Thank
insights,
you.
so many tips. I know listeners will be resonating with a lot of it and be able
Yes.
to implement a lot of your ideas, a lot of your insights, and a lot of your advice when it comes to our voice into their relationships, into their workplaces, into their life, into their own being, which is just
Yes.
beautiful. For those that want to connect with you a little bit more, see what
Yes.
you're doing, interact with you, what's the best way to connect?
The absolute best place for me right now is on LinkedIn at Mellini Monique. I'm actually in a point where I'm expanding my practice. And so there's a name change and content change. And so the best place to start to see that unfurl and blossom right now is on LinkedIn at Mellini Monique. And if you go there, you'll begin to be pointed to all the different other platforms and juicy spaces and places you can find me.
Beautiful. Well, I am truly grateful for your time as you head into your day, because I know
Yes.
it's morning there,
It
and
is.
as I head to bed, right? But just truly grateful for your presence. Just absolutely beautiful to connect in Sardinia, and I look
Yes.
forward to just continuing to connect, and we'll catch up again soon, somewhere in the world.
Thank you so much, Steve. And I am so glad to hear your voice and to know that you are using your voice to cut through the noise. I'm grateful.
Lovely. Thanks, Melanie.